session of the Anchorage Assembly. This is a confirmation hearing for Joe Gerace, Anchorage Health Department Director. It is Wednesday, October 20, 2021, and we are noticed from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar. I believe I saw Mr. Dunbar in the participant list, but if you're there, Mr. Dunbar, we didn't hear you.
Sorry, I'm here. I had a problem with my computer for a second. I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Ms. Quinn-Davidson. Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Ms. Zolotel.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I want to note that the documents for this work session are available online at muni.org. So if you click on the Assembly page and then on Assembly Work Sessions and scroll down, you can find those documents there. The format for this hearing will consist of a brief introduction from the administration, I believe by Mr. Chewbacca, Chief Human Resources Officer, followed by a brief, and by brief I mean up to 5 minutes for each, intro by Mr. Gerace, and then member questions. Before we begin this hearing, I do want to call attention to Charter Section 5.02, Powers of the Mayor, which states, quote, "The mayor shall appoint all heads of municipal departments subject to confirmation by the Assembly on the basis of professional qualifications," end quote. Members are urged to keep in mind that we want to be careful concerning the reputations of nominees. Questions be limited to education and work experience. Please be aware of any sensitive personnel issues that may not be legally permissible for discussion in a public forum. If members have relevant questions concerning personal characteristics or habits, we can consult with legal counsel to consider holding a special meeting and executive session on a later date, or offering the nominee the option to waive the executive session. And with that, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I will now turn to Mr. Chewbacca for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair LaFrance. Thank you, Chair LaFrance. Really appreciate it. It's my pleasure to introduce Joe Gerace, Mayor Bronson's nominee for Director of the Anchorage Health Department. Joe has an incredibly impressive educational and professional background that make him, we believe, an exceptional pick for this role. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Alaska National Guard. He holds a Master of Business Administration with a focus on supply chain logistics and operations, a Master of Science in Physician Assistant Studies with a focus on preventative health, and a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry and Chemical Engineering. He's an American Red Cross Advanced Disaster Instructor, an instructor and trainer for advanced and pediatric life support, basic life support, and emergency medical response, and a State of Alaska Advanced EMT. He's certified in over 20 specialties in disaster response, and he's currently the chairman of the board for the American Red Cross in Alaska. Joe is a highly qualified disaster responder with over 3 decades of experience responding to dozens of disaster deployments at the local, state, and national levels. He served as the Medical Detachment Commander with the Joint Task Force Medical at JBER, where he provided direct medical and logistical support for this pandemic. He's overseen the creation of a new EMS agency for statewide response to medical emergencies, and he previously supported the State Department of Health and Social Services, leading a COVID-19 contact tracing team, as well as efforts to get citizens scheduled for vaccinations and MEB treatments. Immediately prior to joining the Bronson administration, Joe served as the Director of Operations for Visit Healthcare. So we're truly honored that Joe has joined the Bronson administration to serve the public health needs of our municipality. Mayor Bronson thanks you, the Assembly, for considering his nomination. Thank you, Chair LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chewbacca. I want to note for the record that we've been joined by Mr. Perez Verdia at 1:35 p.m. So, Mr. Gerace, if you would like to go ahead and continue. Thank you.
Wow, quite the introduction to follow. I would like to first say good afternoon and thank you to the Assembly members for even taking the time to consider me. I find this a true privilege to be here today at a public hearing for a confirmation for an amazing job opportunity. I've spent a lifetime in service to my fellow community members. It started at a young age, and I have to say that it is just the true calling of my life is to help people, especially at the times they're most vulnerable or most in need. I stand here today and I'm ready to detail that experience, particularly my current activities in the current position, my qualifications, and if you're interested in my future plans for the AHD. The job is actually Director of Health and Human Services, and I take that very seriously. In that role, I get to be over top of the Anchorage Health Department and several other vital agencies. A little about me, as Nikki was saying, I've spent almost 38 years in public service in a multitude of roles, from line firefighter to chief of a department, both paid and volunteer. I also have a huge background in responding to all kinds of emergencies, from in-town stuff here. Our earthquake, I served on our 2018 earthquake continuously for 3.5 months. And I've gone out to just dozens and dozens of different kinds of emergencies, from medical emergencies in war-torn countries to, the typical hurricane response after Katrina and many of those kind of events. And I find it truly an amazing experience to help people when they need it the most. There's no better appreciation than folks that truly need your help. To loop onto that, I've spent the last 34 days immersing myself in the role here as the unconfirmed health department director. During that time, I've identified a ton of internal and external department needs. I've spent some time trying to get the current operations aligned with the current direction of the administration and the Assembly, particularly on the mass care setting, vaccinations, and testing. I'm working diligently with community members from both sides of the aisle, and I have a long history of that community service, working with whether it be business partners, public partners, NGOs, and just members of the community that represent different segments of that community. And I really look forward to my role as the health department director, firming those up and using that lifetime of connections to facilitate better understanding of the health department, of our mission, and understanding how the health department can support those members of the community. And I can say I don't take this job lightly. We really are the agency that catches the people that need the most help at the most important time when people are most vulnerable, and that is not lost on me. The health department's a unique agency. We're not just the health department, we're also the safety patrol, we're also the safety center, we're also animal control. So that's not lost on me either. It's not a simple health department job. And of course, the health department's a lot more than just COVID-19. And I've made this clear as I've spoke to several Assembly members. I think that's an important part of the response, the pandemic response, but I think there's a lot of other opportunities that the health department needs to re-engage in, that we've just kind of we've been in a disaster for 598 days here at the MOA, and we're approaching 600 days. It's time to get back to some of our other core duties. We have a diverse mission, serving one of the most diverse populations in the world, and that is not lost on me either. So I want to make sure that we continue to provide those services to everyone in the community and do it in a uniform, fair, and equitable way. It'll always be my number one mission to make sure that what we're doing the correct and proper way. Then the last piece on me, I can tell you the why, Joe. I'm sure there's 1,000 reasons why, but I'll tell you the two most important. I will always endeavor to place the community's needs at the highest priority. With that said, I make sure that those needs are met in a fair and equitable way across the entire municipality. Second, I refuse to fail when given a mission. And this is a vital service. This is no different. When you call the fire department, they come out and take care of that fire, that medical emergency. When you call the health department and you expect us to be there, we will be there, and we will deliver a high quality product. You know, I really want to say thank you again for taking the time to hear me. I look forward to answering questions on my education, skills, and experience, and I will be glad to help answer some of the questions you probably have about my future for the health department. I've spent quite a lot of time speaking to both internal and external stakeholders to make a decision on what the next steps are best for the AHD. Thank you much for your time.
Mr. Gerace. And now we've got time for member questions. If folks want to go ahead and put themselves in the queue, we'll go ahead and go through the queue. First, Mr. Perez Verdilla.
Hi, thank you. Good to see you, Joe. I just a couple of comments and then I have a question. I've appreciated I've appreciated you over the past couple of weeks. I had a chance to sit down with you and have an extended meeting, and I will just share with my colleagues that you've been extremely responsive in addressing a number of things that have happened over the last few weeks. So I've appreciated that. If you could answer the question that you prompted, I'm very curious about that, about what are some of the sort of most significant priorities you have over the next 6 months, year and a half. So that would be one question. And then one area that I'm particularly interested in is your experience and your plans as it relates to addressing all of the mental health issues that we have in our city, and knowing that crosses over so many other areas, obviously health, but public safety and homelessness and our criminal justice system, and knowing that is such a core area that we need to improve in our city. So I'm curious about your background in that area and whether you have any specific plans to begin to improve how we address that here in our city. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, for priorities, as you all probably aware, as of October 1, the health department picked up the response that was a triple agency response with DHD, the EOC/EM, and the health department. We are the sole agency on it now. So as that has become a priority focus for the health department, I have come to realize that our biggest challenge right currently at the health department is managing the mass care operation we have. We have a very complex mass care operation between the congregate shelter that is in a building that is in and of itself a challenge to run a shelter out of. We have all the non-congregate sites with a lot of special needs folks that there's no simple fix for, and it relates to question 2, Assembly Member. You know, we're going to have to get this under control. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but as we're all aware, there's a huge change coming to Anchorage that I'm very excited to see. And it again wraps around to question number 2. We can't do this alone. You know, this is a community-wide problem. We have a huge amount of people in this town that have a vested interest in this. It's from private agencies to public agencies to individuals that just care, and that would be us. What that looks like, I think the first piece we have to look at, whether it be on the mass care side or the mental health side, I think we need a pretty good assessment of what's needed. I don't think we even have a good number on how many people are currently unsheltered or outside of our Sullivan Arena. We have a good number on the people inside, but even on that number, I think we need to take a hard look at what their core needs are, who, what, when. We need to get into the details. We need to learn their name. We need to become friends, because that's how we find out what the real root cause of the problem is. We can talk to them for 5 minutes about becoming their friend, hearing their story, and getting that to be the real answer from what people tell you is half the story. You have to learn the rest from signs, symptoms, and other things. So the same thing goes with mental health. To answer the question, I've spent a lifetime in public safety and particularly emergency medicine, and we deal with these problems every day. And it is a complex thing. You know, it's not as simple as warehousing or medication. It's getting treatment. It's finding out what root causes are and remedying them. Some of the folks that have some mental health issues, they can be exacerbated by simple little things like being outdoors in bad weather, not getting regular meals, not having availability to regular meds. You know, it's quite the roller coaster to deal with stuff. So I really think the first place is you have to make that hard and honest assessment. In medicine, that's through lab tests or analysis or diagnostics. In this case, it's a survey. It's going out and finding out, meeting the people where they are, not guessing from up in the office on the 4th floor. So I really look forward to getting out there. And the last to answer that, that's kind of my management style, and I didn't bring it up, but I'm a lead from the front leader. So when the situation happened at the Sullivan a few weeks back, I've been at the Sullivan every day since that occurred. I've been at our non-congregate shelters. I can read the reports of my team. I repose great trust in my team's ability, but it really does help to get out there and
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Mr. Perez-Verdia, did you have any follow-up? Or actually,
Yeah, I do, but I'll wait till others go in. I have another question, but I can hold it. So.
Okay, thanks. And Mr. Gerace, I just want to confirm that your audio is working okay, because it kind of.
No, it said somebody muted me, ma'am. Someone muted me. It said I'd been muted, so.
Oh, wasn't me.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll come
I
back.
maybe I went over a time limit. I'm sorry, so I stopped.
No, there's no time limit here. It's just a conversation now, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so next I have Ms. Zelatel in the queue. Ms. Zelatel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a few questions, not that dissimilar from Mr. Perez-Verdia's. And similarly, I would thank you for your responsiveness in the last couple of weeks as we've gotten to know one another and look at some issues. You raised, and I guess, you know, mass care is something that will ultimately end. But it's something we have for at least a number of months moving forward. And exiting mass care, I think, will be a huge challenge. But one of the ways to set that challenge up for success, or the outcome up for success, is how mass care is run in the interim. What you mentioned some challenges about mass care and security challenges, and that you're on the ground. Can you talk a little bit about what your approach to this is going to be? And I ask not just from a mass care perspective, but when we take care of individuals who have vulnerabilities, when we are actually providing care as a municipality, I'd really like to understand your approach to that, how you balance the various interests. Thanks.
Not a problem. Thank you for the question. Great question, because that's really where leaders kind of distinguish themselves. The answer to the question is, you have to be out there and observe what's going on. I don't obstruct my team. I let my team do their thing, but it's that trust but verify piece. So to start with the mass care, you're right. We always have some form of a mass care operation. It may not be emergency response. It may be what I like to call blue skies versus gray skies. We'll get back to a blue skies operation, but we're going to have a caring for people role for the rest of the health department's life. Maybe someday it ends up in a different division or a standalone agency, but initially we're prepared for the transition. This is a historic problem in any shelter. We call it shelter transition, and it occurs anywhere. People have lost their home, which is a lot of people's life. They may not have something to go back to. So it is a complex operation that we involve mental health professionals, like the people from Home for Good, look for permanent sheltering. It is a very complex, again, this is where that public-private partnership or that team approach, you'll hear me use that a lot in emails. You know, it's a team. It's not just the MOA and the MOA health department. It's partnering with the dozens of teams that are out there, from public agencies, the police department, the fire department's teams, public medicine at the Alaska Native Medical Center, Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center. There's just a ton of opportunity to get out there and help folks, you know, where they need it most. You know, sitting around waiting for them to come into the shelter isn't going to catch some of the most vulnerable. So we have to be really proactive, and that's my kind of approach. But getting out there and seeing what's going on, talking to people about why they're not in the shelter, we need to be asking the hard questions. And that's one of the hardest things, is to ask, why aren't you in our shelter? We have this nice building, whether it's an acceptable shelter or not, and getting down into where the devil's in the details, getting down and finding out why they won't access the services. And it could be a language barrier. It could be a learning barrier. It could be as simple as we just didn't present it properly. And then we have to overcome all those hesitancies, fears, you know, the history, whatever it is, and we need to identify it and take it on. And whatever that is, we have to figure it out at the health department. We're the keeper of all the keys. So we got to stick every key in the lock till we find out what unlocks that person. And then we work with that person to get them kind of a customized fit. Sure, a lot of people are going to be able to be a turnkey kind of operation, a one size fits all for 50, 70, 80%, whatever it is. But there's going to be that percentage that we have to spend time and really be hands-on, intricately manage their casework. So it's a complex operation, but I think it starts with identifying what we need. We may find out that number is 50% are going to need a customized solution. But until we take a true and honest assessment, I don't know that I have the tools to answer that, ma'am. I wish I did. I just don't think anyone can come into my office and really help me figure out what that looks like. We have good ideas and good intentions. The next steps to see where the rubber meets the road.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Ms. Zalatel, did you have any follow-up?
I guess I would just provide a quick comment, and that's, I appreciate the answer. I disagree that we don't have a lot of that information. It may not all be in one place. As we move forward, if you are confirmed, I'd be happy to talk with you about that some more. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd love it. It's going to take us all.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, thanks. So you talked about taking on mass care and so on, which is really, that's a big new thing for the health department. So do you have the staff you need for that, to take that on? And then I guess the second question is, what about all the other stuff health department is doing? Do you see changes there, improvements? Just thoughts on that?
Oh, some great questions. The answer is, yeah, and I like it. As you can tell, I can talk. So let me answer the second half of that question, sir, if you don't mind. The health department has to get back to some of its core duties, because they weren't given to us because they didn't matter. From air pollution, air quality to environmental services, we're using a lot of those folks in the response. So the response is integral to the health department operations, because about 50% of the positions are filled by health department. But every time that my health inspectors aren't available to go check a restaurant, we've lost a valuable tool in battling not just COVID, whether it's norovirus, Hep A, all the things that environmental services is around. So I think, and that does play into the COVID-19. So the answer is that we'll go over to the response side. Are we ready for housing and homelessness? Truthfully, no. Are we properly staffed? Absolutely not yet. Do we have a plan? Yes, sir. Is the plan been executed? Yes, it has. We have positions, PCNs in, and we're looking to fill those. We received grant money, and we're going to staff those grant positions up. So the ball's in motion. I would not say that I feel 100% comfortable, but I would not say we're sitting idly by and we're going to get caught. We have a plan. It has been actioned. Could the plan be better? I think every plan could be better. Even if you win the game, you could have done some things right and made some better play calls. So, we're learning as we go. It's a new division, but we have some great support from community partners. Dr. Morris has been just an absolute asset to us. He has so much information, and we still have all of our community partners. I spent 2 hours with Lisa from Catholic Social Services. I mean, it's everyone is looking to help us, and we really, there's nobody we're not willing to listen to. So I think that, yes, once we get a fair assessment of what we really need, we think we know what we need, but until we inherit that operation and start operating, I don't know. And we'll have to come back to you and tell you that, hey, we're going to need a lot more people in this area, maybe not this area. You've also given us shelter licensing, and there's a ton of shelter licensing work alone that we need to address. It's not just the AHD operations. There's all those partners that have shelters, and we need to make sure that we're providing them the licensing and support that they need. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Any follow-up, Mr. Weddleton?
No, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Constant?
Thank you, sir. You just mentioned working with partners. Today we were at the Housing and Homelessness Committee, and it was put on the record that no member of the administration, neither from the health department nor from the Homeless Coordinator's Office is participating in the weekly Housing Push group that is probably the most critical work of our partners in the question of homelessness. And so I'm curious what your approach is going to be to working with the partners.
So again, another great question. Today was a unique situation where we plan on being at those meetings. We had an emergency unfold involving the Sullivan shelter. In fact, I will be going to a 3 p.m. Appointment at the Sullivan right after this because it is that serious. So as far as I'm not sure what statement was made. I apologize, sir. I've been involved in a very important conversation around some activities at the Sullivan. So I'm sure it'll come out in the news. We had some serious, I don't want to do it here because it's a public forum, but we had some serious medical problems and other stuff unfold. But we plan on being a party to that. Dr. Morris is coming underneath the health department immediately, and we'll have a much more unified front. We're not waiting till January 1. Those meetings, particularly the community partnerships, I mean, that's where as I said before, the rubber meets the road there. We can't do this alone. We're 119 people doing the mission of probably 400 people in other health departments in like-sized cities. So it's a giant lift, and we're going to have to be the good partner to all those community partners. They don't always get everything they want. We want to give them as much as we can, but we will be at the meetings going forward. That was it was just a one-off this week that we had a true emergency unfold.
Thanks. And they did mention they have a weekly gathering that they're coordinating that is an important project outside of the scope of our monthly meetings. So I look forward to the department continuing to be a good partner to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Thank you, Mr. Gerace. We'll go back to Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes, thank you. I have just a few questions. You tackled Mr. Weddleton's question, which was, essentially you'd said it. You're constantly understaffed and under budget, and that's not new. That's something that's existed in the health department for a long time. So I'm heartened by your enthusiasm that you're gonna tackle it and you're gonna do it well. But I guess I'm trying to understand how a department like yours can actually do all the things that it's tasked to do when it's consistently lacking resources, both human resources and financial resources. So I'd like you to address that. And then the second question is really around public health versus politics, and I'd like to know, your experience with that in terms of how you balance being in a highly public role in a time of a lot of division, and how you ensure that the department really is not caught up in that, but it is providing accurate, true, and advice and information that's in the best interest of the health of our city, and knowing that that's a challenging time and challenging place to be. So I'm curious about your experience with that and how you want to handle that. So the understaffed and under budget piece, and then the politics versus public health piece I would like you to address. Thank you.
Okay, on the human and finance piece, I don't think I've ever been in a public agency anywhere that has thought it had enough resources to accomplish the mission. I would say that if it got to a point that critical mission was being affected, we would have a direct and open conversation with the assembly about funding. To detail that a little more, I think there are efficiencies to be taken. I think this is another example of partnering. We've reached out to several partners as we realize we're representing and serving their community heavily, and asked them if they want to be a partner with us. And those partners come with some very deep pockets. I'm looking to partner with South Central. I'm looking to partner with the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium because we serve a ton of their clients, what I'd call historic beneficiaries. And I'm looking to be a better partner with them. I don't know that Beans has a great operation where they have the SCF Foundation, the SCF staff is in their building providing medical care. I'm big on, we're not sending men to the moon. We are putting people in positions that thousands of cities and thousands of counties are dealing with also. We want to steal the best pieces of that. There's going to be some struggles. We're going to have some hiccups, but we as long as we keep an eye on our essential mission that the human resources and the financial resources are designed to serve, I think that's where we can make some best practices and action them. And on the politics piece, I think this deserves saying. Medicine is about providing the best answer to people, not the politically correct answer. It's our job to go out and tell you to wear your seatbelt, to, practice safe sexual practices, whatever the messaging from the health department is. It's not always politically driven, and it's not going to be politically driven. I push back to the mayor constantly, and I say, let Dr. Savitt and I advise you what is the best practice. I've had chats with Dr. Savitt about his role as the health director. It's a new role for me. I've managed physicians before. These are highly intelligent people. They didn't get to these places in life. They are highly intelligent people, and they come with their own set of opinions. But we have to make sure that we take off our, as your doctor, hat and put on your private citizen hat, and that distinction needs to be clear to help some of that clarity you're asking for. The answer on some of the other information about politics is, I think we are critically short-staffed. We have, just in the response, we don't have an epidemiologist, and we're looking for several. We got grant money and in-house money to hire 2 epidemiologists. We have some data money that we need to be using to get data ourselves. As you saw today, the state reviewed more death certificates and backed the data numbers up till April again. I think that we need to be looking at a lot of that data, and particularly, I've said this before, MOA-centric data. It's great we know what's going on in the state, but I think we need to be working with partners like the Alaska Native Medical Center, Prov, and Regional, and asking them questions and asking for more data so that we can make very specific judgment calls. I care about the rest of the state. I keep a very close eye to what's going on, knowing that we're a hub city, but I think that we need to be really down and detail oriented. As an MBA, I always am worried about accurate data. We are driven off accurate data. If the data is broke, then it's worthless. It's actually bad. And so I really want to make sure that as I'm presenting stuff to you, that data is fresh, that data is accurate, and we're not backing up. I mean, what the state's had to do in the last 2 or 3 weeks, where they found 60 plus deaths one day and 44 another, that can't happen. I mean, we need to just say, if it is, then we need to say data might be broken because of a hack or whatever the issue on the state side where we get our data. We've asked our vendors that we're paying money to do a much better job in providing us data, and they have been. I didn't have Optic on a lot of the testing when I first came over here. I knew it was at Visit. We worked with Visit, and they've been providing us with nightly numbers. And I think you've heard me quote some of those numbers, 310,000 tests and some other information. So it's a complex thing, but we're making incremental steps. We're not going to fix it overnight, but I do think we owe you as much quality data as we can get and verify, and then report that to the assembly and the citizens. We owe it to you. We're the tip of the spear, and we have to provide a clean and clear, concise answer, not a politically charged answer. And I'll be honest, I haven't had any pressure to change any of my reports. And if I did, I would push back. I'm a very vocal and honest person about taking the data and telling you the real facts. I don't dress it up. Hey, you have high blood pressure. I need you to stop smoking, find a new stress life, take this medication, stop eating the fried chicken. There's no one-step answer in medicine or in any of the things that deal with public health, mental health, or just government. So it's that shotgun broad approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to just follow with a comment that I do appreciate that. And I think one of the most important things about your role is trust, and that we know that the information that we're getting from you is accurate and is current and is not biased in any way. So I appreciate you saying that, and I look forward to getting that kind of information from you and your staff. Thank you.
And if I could just tag on to that, sir, in the history of medicine, we've made this mistake over and over again. We could go back 200 years and it was leeches, right? And all the way up to current thinking. We've used medications and we end up finding out the opioid crisis is based on direction providers got that Oxycontin was going to be safer than using morphine. Now there's class action suits. So I think there's a real piece in public health where we can't just knee-jerk react to something. We have to make sure it's factually based and they're good facts, not just somebody said Oxycontin, for instance. We need to be focused on delivering quality, honest medicine or healthcare advice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace, and thank you, Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Joe. You already actually partially answered the question that I got in the queue for, which is I was going to ask you about the search for an epidemiologist. I guess if you could drill down a little bit more on that, and if you have any kind of time frame when you think we might have an epidemiologist on board, I'd like for you to reiterate that. And then my question is, last year, or I should say, sort of the beginning part of this year and last year, during the pandemic, we've heard directly from the epidemiologist. The epidemiologist, then Dr. Janet Johnston, spoke directly to the Assembly on a number of occasions and would make direct recommendations, say, hey, we need you should do this, you should do that. And a couple times, the Assembly, didn't do what they asked. I remember one case, she was like, you should not get rid of this requirement, and we still did it. But it was important for us to hear from her. And so my question is, can we expect to hear from the epidemiologist directly, as we have in the past, or is it your plan that the epidemiologist will not speak directly to the Assembly, but rather will speak through you or through someone else in the administration? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The first answer is absolutely, you can hear from them. I believe that they owe you the same level of respect and cooperation that I'm going to provide and do provide. Realize that I am I get direction from above me, and I try to comply with my boss's guidance. But I think the epidemiologist can present to you any of the answers you want, particularly if there's things you want in a report. I'd love to work with you folks and get it all in a report, because I don't think just you deserve it. If you're thinking about it, I'm sure you have 100 people that are thinking about it. So I would love to get those things. And, so maybe the report's 2 pages the first week they're here, and it's 10 pages by the 5th week. The answer to your other part of that question, the search has actually had interviews, and that is proceeding to the next steps. We're continuing to interview. We didn't have a lot of applicants. I do want to note that, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and if healthcare providers are available, a lot of the times it's people that are, maybe they've had a controversy at their current job, or, they had the same thing that, you were talking about with our epidemiologist. They might have had a falling out. So we're looking at all that. We want to bring you a quality candidate. The other piece is that, an epidemiologist it could be anything from a doctor of infectious disease. It could be somebody with like our last one had a PhD. It could be somebody with an MPH, or it could be, we could get a CPA to do some of that data calculation in partnership with a medical doctor. So to answer your question, one of the things to keep it apolitical, I have a whole herd of docs, full MDs, not some PhD pharmacists. And when I have a question, I don't take just one answer. I ask them, what do you think? And, take any topic. What do you think about zinc to prevent COVID? I ask the PharmD, he's going to give me a different answer than my immunocontrol doctor, as opposed to a general practitioner. And then my internist says, well, the danger is that, high magnesium levels can be a co-related. Okay, great. I don't just take one answer. So with all due respect to even Dr. Savitt, I run stuff by my physician wife. She's been at it 29 years as a family practice and internist. And I ask her, what do you think about this? I read an article, and through my lens, it seems like it's good. But then I talk to my group of friendly advisors, and they all say, Joe, that's crazy. Vitamin C is not really going to help, or it is going to help. So I think that's the piece too, that I have to have an open mind. And if you want something, I want to find a way to give it to you. I've said this on many calls with a few Assembly members. Joe's answer is, I want to say yes. And if not, yes, but I never want to say no. So my answer is yes, you will see the epidemiologist. They want to give you the answers. You are a part of the team. And if you have questions, I want to get you the answer so that you can pass it on to the people that probably where it originated. Did that answer you, sir?
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. So you previously spoke about how data can be used if it's good to help drive good outcomes, but if it's bad, can be harmful. And one thing that I've noticed in the last 5 months or 4 months is the data reporting methods for the COVID response locally and at the state have changed a number of times. And I can't quite grasp the rationale behind the changes, but every time it seems like there's less and less information in more and more difficult ways to figure it out. I can't find a daily tally of cases and a daily tally of deaths and a daily tally of hospitalizations. In some places, there's a daily number for today, but then it defaults to a week, and then you just can't make any damn sense of it. So what's your approach to ensuring that there's data fidelity and that the information is accessible? Because we're losing the ability to see into what's actually happening when these processes get convoluted.
Yes, sir. Your statement's absolutely correct. And that's been one of my biggest concerns is, we take the state's data. When you say these are the numbers, then you have that oops moment and you say we found 44 more. People don't care whether it's through death certificate review or, changing of death certificates because physicians noticed that they had made a mistake on the recording, whatever it is. So to answer your question, this is a great question because we are in the process of fixing this right now. And right out of college, I taught a little bit, and I used to tell the kids, show me the math. And I don't mean the math, whether it be chemistry, science, mathematics. I want to see your process. And that's what I think we owe you and we owe the citizens. Instead of just giving you this number that says, bloop, 67.2. Well, but we found 7,000 in the case, the second immunizations dropped from 67 to 65, and people freaked out. But we didn't explain why it dropped. It's okay if there's been a change. Hey, we discovered 7,000 shot records and they went up. But we don't get that data, even as a partner to the state. We ask somebody and it's, there's some hemming and hawing and looking away. And I say, that doesn't work in medicine. If I said, take this drug and your rash will go away, you take the drug and the rash doesn't go away. You're standing there asking, I put hydrocortisone on it for 2 weeks. I was wrong. That's not what you want to hear. And that's not what our citizens want to hear. So as we speak right now, we are working a better, and I like to keep it simple. What I call the average person can understand it. You don't need an MBA or a degree in mathematics, a very simple sheet. If you look at the MOA's website, because the data was so convoluted from the state and gets so erratically reported, we're having a hard time getting to give you a good answer. So that's one of the things we're looking at is we have our own source of data. We're paying these folks good money. We should be using the data from our testing and vaccination locations to at least cross-check what we're getting from the state. And so, and we're in that data every day. This is the neat part. While I have that medical knowledge, I really like the numbers, and I like to look at what's happened in the last 2 days with testing, making sure that the fixes that we thought might fix things haven't adversely affected it, because sometimes we go in with the best plan and the data doesn't reflect that. So I really am right there with you that the data really helps us drive this decision making, but you can't make decisions with broken data. You can't write checks on empty bank accounts, and you can't make data decisions with data that's broken. You can, but then you got to take a longer, bigger snapshot and use a median average or some kind of margin or a factor plus or minus 2%. We don't even say that. Have you ever seen an exit poll that didn't say plus or minus 2 or plus or minus 20? You're like, well, that's not a real accurate poll. I think we're in that same boat where the data inaccuracies has caused people to want to crumple it up and throw it in the trash because it's been 600 days of it's the zombie apocalypse to it's rainbows, and you can't, one day it's rainbows and the next day it's raining cats and dogs. It doesn't work. People are starting to doubt us, and we can't have people doubt medicine. When we say this is the best thing for you, we truly mean that. And nobody wants to give you a bad outcome or a bad answer. So I really hope we can start getting that data and getting it cleaned up. And we have a plan. We are working the website right now to make it much more user-friendly, show a lot more things, and break it out for people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Ms. Zalatel?
Thank you. So I understand that the health department has a gigantic mission, and I think this is quoting or paraphrasing Ms. LaFrance, that the health department is the third leg of the public safety stool. So my question is, how do you view that role as being, public health being the third leg of the public safety stool, but also how do you balance that with the mission of the health department to provide for care? Because public safety is not often thought of as a caregiving type of approach. And so I'd just like to hear a little bit about how you believe that role as that third leg intersects, and then how you balance that against the nature of what a health department's mission is.
Great question, because this is really, I think, what really speaks to my qualifications, and not so much the qualifications, just the sheer experience. We are the third leg, and truthfully, we deal with some of the, what we call critical but non-emergency situations. And so just like the fire department, they have their primary response role, but they have all that back end stuff from fire inspections and permitting. We're the same way. We have that forward facing piece, which is our public health nurses, which is ASC and ASP. We have those missions, and they're vital, and we need to make sure that we not only continue those, but we tune them up. Just like the fire department we have is a class 1 fire department, which is an outstanding rating. I want to be your class 1 health department. I want when ASP rolls up, they get out and it looks like you have big city paramedics. I want to see people that really care. I want to get people to the point that they take that piece seriously. We are the last line of defense for some of the most vulnerable people that are easily drop through the cracks or disappear into the ether. That can't happen. And so the answer is we're going to take a hard look internally. We need to identify the forward-facing public safety type roles and make sure we have the right people in them. Get people from the right backgrounds that understand. And this is a true continental shift at the health department. You mentioned medicine. We are in the medicine game, but we're not long-term primary care providers. We would be your doc in the box or acute medicine or preventative medicine. We do a lot in the Army. It sounds funny. We go out and tell people change their socks. And I know everyone that's ever been in the military gets tired of hearing the medic run around, change your socks. But we really are trying to do preventative medicine. And that's where we need to take the health department. That preventative medicine is unwanted pregnancy, narcotic overdose, all the pieces that are public health, protecting people from the cold, protecting people from situations where vulnerable people are put in places where they can be taken advantage of. So I think it's just using some of the skills I have, because that's a new concept for a lot of people that came out of, take an epidemiologist or Dr. Savitt. He came out of a 40-year pediatrics practice. While he dealt with a lot of emergencies and he's very skilled at taking care of a peds patient from get-go, not a lot of people are really comfortable with getting out in the street or going out in the woods. Like the other day, we went out to homeless encampments. That's a new stretch. And I understand asking a nurse that has a ton of hospital experience and is an outstanding nurse to put themselves out in a high-risk situation is a big lift. We're going to need to find a way to do it and do it safely, because protecting the team, firefighters don't run into a burning building willy-nilly. There's a plan on entry, plan to escape, and a backup plan in case something goes wrong. And we're going to have that same level of attention to detail here, but we've got to make sure the mission is a success. One person out in the cold with cold injuries, forget a serious cold injury, just frostbite, that's a concern for me. I failed that person. And we will not fail people in this town. If that means we need to look at what we do with X program or Y program, we're going to take a look at it. To me, there's no perfect program. And even in a perfect program, you can evaluate it and then you can share it with other people and you may learn one thing. So I could speak on this for an hour because I'm passionate about community paramedicine. I'm passionate about, and the best part of COVID-19, it's opened up all these things. 10 years ago, if I told you you're going to see your doctor via a webcam and that's how he was going to take care of your medical conditions, you would have laughed me out of the office. And today it's the preferred method for most providers. So I think that we can access some of that technology and the current trends and really provide a cutting edge health department experience for people. Are we going to be perfect? No one is, but I don't want to fail at even, I don't even want a D or a C. I want to be your A or B plus health department, and we'll get there. I can guarantee that. The team, I have an outstanding team, and they are all 100% in, and they want the mission to be a success. And it's just herding all those cats in one direction. They all have great ideas. None of my people are, this is not an agency that has, we have tons of college educated, super motivated, super educated people. The job of leadership is just getting us all move in the right direction. So I actually look forward to it because I have such a great team, and we'll make sure that we are the third leg, and we're going to be, you will see us act like a true, like your fire department, your police department. I want to be your chief of public health.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. And I see Mr. Constant is in the queue next.
Yeah, so that all sounds so good, and it has to be squared though with the fact that there's a budget memo that came out and a drive to make a 5% cut across the board, plus or minus, depending on your department. How does that proposal square with an approach that says, and we all know staffing is really the only fungible part of a budget when it comes to cuts. You're going to be having to do this with a substantially smaller staff. So how do you square it?
Great question. We got a $14 million CDC grant. So we are looking at all those alternate sources of money besides general fund and tax, and that's how we're going to fund it. We have 7 current positions that we're starting to look for people for. So we're finding alternate funding sources. I have no problem going to SCF and saying, hey, 30% of the people I'm seeing are historic recipients. I'd really like you to pick up 30% of the outside staff at whatever we're doing at the Sully or whatever the new sheltering system looks like. I don't have a problem. And we've already found those revenue streams, and we're going to keep finding them. We have, I don't want to give it away. It's a public setting, but I'd be glad to talk in private. We've already had lots of people reach out about, new and interesting ways to fund some of these dynamic, and especially not so much environmental, whether it be restaurant testing, but the public health stuff. There are tons and tons of public health grants and access and equality. There's just, sky's the limit. You just got to do the work and get in there, and we're doing it. And I have an amazing team, and they are primed. Just yesterday, we asked for approval of the state health department wants to help us with 9 positions. So between the CDC Foundation stuff and this COVID-19 money and the state, we have a ton of positions. They're not perfect answers. They're not PCNs. They're not lifelong employees of the health department, but it gives us people in the job to do the job, and we start becoming effective. Then we look at the next step, which is, wow, this is really working. Let's turn it into a permanent position. Or, hey, this isn't working. Let's adjust fire and go a different direction. So we found some of that, and we're already actioning it. So that's the exciting part. I'd love to talk about some of it, but just yesterday we presented to the administration on what this looks like as a no-cost option to fix many positions.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Any follow-up, Mr. Constant?
Yeah, I think that all of that sounds great. You need an administrative team that can effectively do the writing and the work that's required to bring down those dollars. None of it just lands, and that actually takes personnel. And so it's an interesting puzzle.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Do members have any other questions for Mr. Gerace? I don't see anyone else in the queue. Before I turn to you, Mr. Gerace, for any final comments, I do want to note a couple things for Assembly members, that Mr. Gerace's confirmation is on the agenda for the Wednesday, October 27 meeting. It is item 10D3, 10 Delta 3. And I do also want to note that there has been a request for a special meeting for an executive session from a member. And after Assembly leadership consults with council, information will be forthcoming. And so at this time, I would just ask if, well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Gerace, for being here today. And if you would like to add anything else, we have a few minutes. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for the questions. You know, they extracted a lot of the things I wanted to discuss. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this. I didn't go looking for a position. I had been interacting as the director of visits operation with the administration, trying to resolve some issues. And I was truly honored when they asked me, would I be interested in this position? You know, it is truly an opportunity of a lifetime for me. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I do this job and the team that I have all of the respect, honor, and support that I can give them. So thank you for taking the time to hear me today. I truly appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to hear from me.
Thank you, Mr. Gerace. Seeing no one else in the queue, this work session is adjourned. Thank you all.